Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking player housing in World of Warcraft. Which, yeah, I know, I did warn you we'd be talking a lot of housing this year in the build up to its release, but this is a big one. Because Blizzard, who have been surprisingly candid and vocal about their plans for housing so far, put out another Bluepost just a few days ago, which gives us our biggest indicator yet about what the finished product is going to look like and how it is going to work. And quite frankly, a whole bunch of our biggest questions about the system have now been answered. And in a way, much better than I think most of us dared hope. I don't mind admitting, I was very wrong in some of my assumptions of WoW housing, and I am not exaggerating when I say this entire thing is way better than we thought it was going to be, in a couple of very important ways that legitimately make it potentially the equal of the very best in the entire MMO space, which is pretty good really, isn't it? So join us as we go through that Bluepost, spot some interesting little details, and allow ourselves to get properly excited about WoW's upcoming player housing, which genuinely looks very cool indeed. Okay, go. So this Bluepost that we're looking today is dedicated entirely to the interior customization of your home, which we already know is going to be a part of the wider neighborhood zones, as one of around 50 plots per phase, which can be public or private, as in one just for you and your buddies or guildies or community members. Very interestingly, one of the things that this post clarifies right at the very end, which I think is actually a good starting point, is that the inside of your home is completely disconnected and irrelevant to the outside. As in, your home could look like a giant mansion with a million windows from the outside, but be a one-room tiny cave on the inside. Or a tiny little hut when seen from your neighborhood street, but a sprawling mansion on the inside. I think that is actually kind of indicative of Blizzard's entire approach for this system here. There's a surprising lack of arbitrary rules and restrictions on what you are able to create. And be honest, how many of us expected that? Of course, the biggest news, and for me, surprise here, is how furniture and items in the home will be placed and displayed. Arguably the most important part of any player housing system, and Blizz clarify that there will be two modes for arranging your stuff: basic and advanced. Basic is how I think most of us imagined WoW's housing would work. Honestly, even if this was the whole extent of it, it would still be far more detailed and customizable than I personally would ever have allowed myself to hope for. Furniture that is placeable in any spot you like, on a snap grid, rotational to 15-degree increments, placing items on top of other items. The Bluepost mentions being able to place individual books on bookshelves as your heart desires. Basic mode is already a bit better than the absolute best case scenario that I had imagined room decoration would be. Because look, I wasn't one of these "it's just Garrisons 2.0 people, you know. I didn't think that there would be a spot you could put a table and you just choose your table, the spot where you can put your bed and you just choose your bed or whatever, but I wasn't expecting this kind of freedom either. This is excellent. If this was all WoW player housing had to offer, I'd already be saying this is a massive win, but this is just the beginning, because then there is advanced mode. Advanced mode gives you complete control over every object you place. No grids here. You can change the size of everything within what are described as generous parameters. Using the still funny gimbals, you can alter the position of everything on any part of its axis and place it anywhere, including floating in the air, or sunk into the ground, or clipping through walls and other furniture. You can change the color of things. I repeat, there are dye sets that let you change the color of your furniture however you like. A sentence in the Bluepost with some very interesting wording actually that we'll be looking at a little bit closer later later on. This is the kind of complete interior player housing building sandbox that, quite frankly, I didn't think World of Warcraft and its creaky 20-year-old engine and spaghetti code was capable of creating, and gives players endless possibilities. This is the moment when this player housing news changed from being a segment on the weekly reset to its very own breathlessly excited video that you are watching now. And I know that many of you will be sitting there right now, especially if you're not familiar with player housing and other MMOs, and you'll be thinking, well, that's all very nice, Taliesin, but honestly, impressive though it is, what on earth is the point of being able to move furniture like this? Who wants their table floating in the air or poking out of the ground? Isn't this just a complete waste of time? There's no practical use to any of this kind of customization. And honestly, that is a fair point, but you are wrong, because it's this kind of customization that will allow players to make their homes look exactly how they want to look, way beyond what objects and furniture Blizz might actually design for them. So, as an example, say you don't like any of the wall options that Blizz have provided for you for your home. Well, there's nothing to stop you taking this big wood and metal table, flipping it on its side, clipping it through the walls so that only the toppermost wood and metal surface is showing through the wall, and then do that over and over to create a chunky metal paneled wooden walls. You can create floating levels, you can hang rugs from walls. The possibilities are literally endless, as can be seen with just a quick look through YouTube of Final Fantasy XIV decor guides, except 14 needs add-ons, which are illegal, to do this stuff, whereas this level of creative expression looks like it will be open to any WoW players who want to spend that kind of time and effort on their housing, which, you know, many of you won't, but I know many of you will. We see a very small example of this in one of the images that Blizz feature on the Bluepost. This barrel with what I assume is like a shelf clipped through it to create a cool, unique drinks table. The article mentions their devs shrinking down paint buckets and putting them on shelves to create spice racks, or growing bushes to make them into garlands for fireplaces. There is potentially hundreds of hours of tweaking and experimentation here for players that want to dive that deep, and that amazes me, honestly. I would have bet money, I would have bet my children that WoW player housing would never have got anywhere near this type of customization. I just didn't think it was possible. There's more answers to some other of our most important questions in this post too. When we were shown the two concept art interiors and their very human and orc stylings, there was a fair bit of worry in the community that there wouldn't be much freedom in the themes available in your homes in terms of items. Like, are we going to have to choose between orc or human or elf or goblin or something like that? The freeform advanced mode pretty much mitigates that worry anyway, but not everyone is going to put that much effort into things, and that's very fair. But don't worry, because the Bluepost says if you want blood elf wallpaper with a stone roof and a wooden floor, go for it. Which is just clarifying that there will be no restrictions on the styles that you can combine, and that there will hopefully be a lot of styles to choose from, certainly more and more over time. And that lack of restriction is a recurring theme, which I know I keep mentioning, but which honestly is something of a surprise, because, you know, Blizz does kind of like putting weird arbitrary restrictions on fun things historically, that's all. We even get a hint at how home items will be organized with these menus. And obviously this is a super early internal build. The finished thing could look completely different when it goes live. May I remind you of the original warband camp scene concepts shown at that features reveal at BlizzCon, but it should give us some idea of what Blizz are thinking. I especially like the wording in the dye and recolors paragraph. For newly created assets, as opposed to legacy ones from existing art, we are allowing players to dye them a variety of colors. And first, like, yay for dyeing a bunch of different colors. This is an incredibly unexpected feature in my opinion, because it seems to be something that goes directly against Blizzard's collecting philosophy. Recolors of the same mounts or transmogs being another thing to collect. So this just in itself is exciting, and I know you're getting extra excited at the prospect of that meaning we might see it applied to mounts and transmog in the future. And, you know, maybe? I guess? I still don't know if I'd want that especially. I need convincing either way. Leave a comment, let me know what you think, like and subscribe, etc. But I think for housing items, yes, Great, load me up with that sweet ass dye. Blizz do make the effort to differentiate between legacy pre-existing art and new art here though, which is interesting because it confirms that eventually pretty much every existing piece of in-game furniture that exists right now will find it into our player housing collections, which makes perfect sense because there's 20 years worth of assets there to use. It's basically free content and it's a no-brainer, but it's nice to hear Blizz say it. But none of that older stuff that's in the game now is going to be dyeable in this system. Only new assets created for player housing and presumably for every piece of in-game furniture after the feature launches. Which is another thing about player housing and furniture in general, isn't it? New furniture and items and doodads and things are created every patch, every expansion, anyway, just for placing out in the world for set dressing. Player housing lets you double dip on those assets and dev time by making them usable in players' interiors as well. You get double the use out of that work. I love the revelation that partition walls will be a thing, meaning that within the overall footprint of your interior, you can create rooms and spaces as you see fit. Another level of freedom that I was not expecting and which I think is awesome. This feature is low-key one of the coolest things in this Bluepost, in my opinion, even though I suspect a lot of people won't actually realize that until after it launches. You can see in the image provided that someone has created a cool curved wall within the natural edges of the housing space. Just another way that players can get creative. Oh, and another very, very cool thing on this image too. It says which floor of the property we are looking at here, which certainly would suggest that we are allowed more than one level. This is not going to be World of Bungalowcraft, fam. We are going to get stairs, fam. I've made a lot of play in this video so far about the lack of restrictions that Blizz are imposing on players here, but in this presentation, we can spot indications of at least a few. So I want to go back to those menus for a second and point out something that I'm sure most of you noticed, but which I'm sure plenty of you didn't, especially if you're not familiar with typical player housing in RPGs. You can see that here every item listed has a value next to it, and up in the corner of the UI there is an overall figure. This would appear to be your limit to the amount of things that you can actually place within your home. So you can't have an infinite amount of stuff in your gaff, you can only spend within that budget. So in this example, the player has an item budget of 10,000 magic house allowance, and the nice comfy armchair in their collection costs 26 magic house allowance, which means if they wanted, they could fill their home with 384 comfy armchairs, but they could not fill it with 385 comfy armchairs, because that would take them over their home's allowance. And also, in either case, they wouldn't have any allowance for literally like anything else, like a toilet or whatever. Oh man, good point. Are we gonna have toilets? I'm just saying, I think we should have toilets. We know the art exists. The assets are there. Assets. On that cool top-down view screenshot, we see another restriction. The room limit. We talked about how you can build walls within the space to make the rooms however you like, but in this image there's a room limit of 10 in the top corner. So does this actually mean that you might not have the freedom to partition the space out as you choose, even if 10 is a very high limit, more than they fit in here? Well, at first, I thought so, yeah, but looking at the image again, the number of used rooms given in this picture is 2, and like, there are more than 2 rooms that have been created within this space, right? And actually, there are circles on each of the 4 outer walls here, and one of them is lit up. So actually, I think the rooms in question here are these big squares that everything is built inside. What I assumed was the whole player house. I think there's another one of these spaces again through one of these doors. And if there are 10 of these overall size spaces available to you, then shit, your player house can be massive, vast. This is an insane amount of space and completely customizable. This is kind of wild when you think about it, okay? You have the option here to not just make a house, but a mansion with like 60 odd rooms. You could make a hotel or a hospital or a death maze. Yeah, didn't your mind automatically go to death maze after hospital? That's just a natural progression. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not weird. And don't forget, these houses will be visitable. We don't know to what extent yet, but definitely at least by people that you invite. So all it needs is for some of this player housing furniture to have like basic interaction or physics, and it's not hard to see people making escape rooms or proper Minecraft style instances or dungeons for their friends to play through. Eventually we could have another Dota on our hands here, and that's before we even consider what manna from heaven all of this is to role players. You might be able to tell I'm pretty excited about all of this. Also, it's very plain to see now why Blizz have decided that the inside of our homes will have absolutely zero bearing on the size and shape of the outside, because this incredible freedom for the inside would inevitably be much more limited if the interior and exterior had to be relative in some way. There are still lots of questions about player housing overall. Obviously, Blizz bring up plenty themselves in this article, such as how will professions interact with them, displaying mounts and pets, how collections will be collected. But honestly, the evidence suggests that we are not going to have to wait very long for the answers to these. It would seem now that these blue posts are going to be a very regular occurrence. This one came out pretty much exactly a month after the Neighborhoods one. We already know loads more about housing than I think any of us dreamed we would at this stage, and with this post in particular, I can say that for me at least, it's already way better than I thought it would be. More freedom, more customization, more potential than any of us dared hope. This interior stuff is genuinely nearing a best case scenario, and I am very excited to see how Blizzard are gonna dick this up. I mean, deal with all those other things that we have questions about. That's what I mean, obviously. But what do you think? Is this detail on interior decorating of your player housing a pleasant surprise? Or are you actually disappointed by what's on offer? That's okay. How does this compete with the housing in your other favorite MMO? I am sincerely interested to know, so let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. And patrons, seriously, thank you, because without you, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evertel. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Cams. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evertel. Until next time, cheerio.